Hello, and welcome to Fixing My Faith. My name is Vern. I was a Jehovah's Witness for 30 years. I share my journey and my healing process. I research the Bible, I give my opinion, and I share the latest up-to-date JW news around the world. I love your comments. Welcome to the channel. Welcome back. And today we're going to look at this book. I haven't really advertised this book that much that I wrote. Wrote a couple of books, but the one is published. It's on Amazon, and it's available if anybody wants to get it and read it. Not a lot of people read anymore. Everyone wants to watch videos. So I actually took a piece of this book, just 10 minutes of it, and it's about Rutherford. Well, the book is really about my life. What happened as a JW. I started writing it with this Bible, and this is the Bible I had. It's a 1984 edition. It's the most accurate New World Translation. It still has John 8, John 8, 1 to 11. It still has that in here. So I can use that, Jesus' words. But I wrote the book on that. I was afraid to go on the website at that time. I was afraid of the word apostate. I was afraid of the word cult. I was afraid of everything. But I just started writing, and well, let me give you a little glimpse into the book. Here's the book now. We changed the name to Heaven and Back. Here's what it says on the back. Indoctrination runs deep in the Jehovah's Witness cult. So this book will take you through the depths of my mind as I was pulling myself out of the cult trance. It's like a magic spell that keeps you bound while you look at the outside world with disgust and pity. And I used the power of love to overcome the power of judgment. Truth became clearer as I unraveled the mysteries that started the cult. Join me for a journey into my subconscious mind during my 1,444 hours of self-interrogation and reprogramming. And after enduring 30 years of indoctrination and the mind control, it took another 10 years to remove the programming from my mind. Now I enjoy the journey of love that God intended after freeing myself from all prior religious beliefs. So this is the book, To Heaven and Back in One Night. It starts out by saying, I dedicate this to my wife for her faith in God, her hope for what's ahead, and her love for what's present. A special thanks to Chris B. for editing. He's a local journalist that just came by for some eggs every other week, and he agreed to do all the editing for a dozen eggs here and there. So we really want to thank Chris. A note to the reader. I wrote this story with the encouragement from my wife to help me deal with the aftermath of leaving the Jehovah's Witness religion. I'd been in the organization for 30 years and was a pioneer for the final 3. It's been 10 years since disassociating myself, and prior to writing the book, I had a lot of anger toward the religion. Starting to put my feelings on paper and not liking what I saw, I decided to rewrite a fictional setting into the story. Beginning to write, I found myself immersed back into the Bible once again. This was humbling, for I could not prove the old Jehovah's Witness teachings with their Bible. I started to find discrepancies with even the simplest concepts like truth. Realizing this, I started to look deeper, and I found most major doctrines and belief had little to no scriptural support. I felt like I had been involved in a manufactured religion all those years. As a result of this journey, I felt compelled to share my story, and hopefully this will help many. The next part, I start out with a prayer, and here's the prayer. Now remember, I'm an old farmer, okay? We plant seeds. We grow crops. It's amazing how everything comes about in this earth, just from a seed. So a prayer is like that. From a prayer, you plant a seed. And when the seed becomes fertile, it germinates into faith. Hope is the water. Belief ripens your prayer. Manifestation is your harvest. And folks, that does work. we seen it with Be Free 2023. That was all just a prayer, and it manifested. So that's how it starts. So we start with chapter 1. I'm not going to get into the book, but the chapter 1 is the angel comes and gets the main character, Mr. Doe. I'm the protagonist in the book. Of course, every author is. And so we go to heaven. We go to mid-heaven. And it's this little cloaked platform. It's like a little rock. It's just above the earth. No one can see it, but it's there, cloaked. And we all know what cloaking is. We watch enough space movies. In fact, the U.S. military is cloaking their jets so that radar can't spot them. So cloaking is real. So that's what happened. Once upon the little mid-heaven, there's a pearly gate, of course. And get lined up. Everyone's getting a palm branch. There's an angel there handing out palm branches as everyone goes in the pearly gate. I get to the angel and he says, "I'm sorry, I can't give you one. You don't qualify." Why? Well, because I'm an XJW. He didn't tell me that, but I knew it. I didn't have the truth. You see, I thought the watchtower was the truth. So I had to go through a narrow road. It was dark, down a valley, up. I had to go to the pits of hell, climb up a mountain to get to the desert. And the desert was where Satan was there to test you 3 times. And then finally you have to cross a big river, and then you get to the Golden City. So once in the Golden City, it's explained just like Revelation talks about it. And you get there, there's 7 towers. In amongst the 7 towers, there's workers. There's 144,000 workers. And there's 12 gates around with pearls on each of the gates. And those gates actually go to heaven, the real heaven. And heaven has an unlimited space for as many people that want to go to heaven. So it's all a process. So it's interesting what comes from your imagination once you start writing. So I'm going to give you a little bit of it. There's a lot of truth in this book, lots of truth, so it's worth reading. But the fiction takes out the anger, and it makes it quite an interesting story. Now, I'm going to play a little bit of it. I was able to put 10 minutes together as a movie. I put it together where we're in court. Jesus is the judge, the 12 apostles. John is the crown prosecutor, the apostle John. And they decided, they interviewed Russell first, and they went through his flaws, but they needed to find ground zero. You see, Russell wasn't ground zero for the Jehovah's Witnesses. All of his beliefs do not match the Jehovah's Witnesses today, and Jesus actually okayed Russell to start his religion. He started it based on what Russell was teaching, but then it apostatized. And you see, the heavenly organization didn't know about that in court. So they had to resurrect Russell and then resurrect Rutherford. And once they got Rutherford on the stand, it became interesting, because then they realized this was ground zero. And then they knew what to do next. So I can't get it all in there. It's only 10 minutes. But here it is. It gives you a sample of what's in the book. Now, in mid-heaven, Rutherford is resurrected, and he's brought up and sworn into the court by John. He is a sharp-dressed man, clean-shaven, with piercing eyes. He glances down at me with a snide-looking smile, and I had to turn away as his glare made me uncomfortable. John steps forward to speak as he looks over to Rutherford. "Mr. Rutherford, please tell this court when you were baptized into Mr. Russell's religion and how you took over. Please note, Mr. Rutherford, Jesus can read your heart as you testify." Rutherford takes the platform. His eyes pierce over the crowds, and then he glares back at John. "I was baptized into the Bible students of the time in 1906, and a year later in 1907 I became the legal advisor and rolled the Bible students movement into a legal corporation called the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. Later, after Charles passed away in 1916, he left no heirs to the society, and so there were many vultures, in my opinion, that wanted the control. Since I was doing the traveling lectures for a year or so, I ran into the election, and I was elected presidency in 1917. John asks, "What type of transition was it?" Rutherford whips around to look at John and says, "It was fine." John says, "Mr. Rutherford, we understand your obstinance toward judicial hearings, and so I advise you to answer the questions fully, as your answers will determine your future fate." Rutherford looks down a little more sheepish and admits, "Yes, I used my authority as a judge and legal advisor in pushing others out, and the organization split." John asks, "How were you able to maintain leadership in the organization and obtain the legal rights to the books from Mrs. Russell?" Rutherford, now more sheepish, looks at Jesus, and Jesus' eyes are as fire. Rutherford looks back at the audience and then down to the floor and says in a quiet voice, "I had legal control. So I used my power to take control, and I pushed his wife out. Women have no place in teaching and instructing. And I also pushed out about a third of the group, and they became Russellites." John looks over at Rutherford, who is still looking at the floor, embarrassed, and says, "Thank you, Joseph, for your honest answer. Joseph, were you jealous of Russell's insight?" "No. I was upset that they didn't honor me the same as they honored Charles." "Well, how did that make you feel, Joseph?" "I felt angry and upset. My wife even left me over my anger and control." "How did you deal with all these feelings, Joseph?" "Even though I was only a substitute judge, I wanted people to give me more respect, and so I demanded they refer to me as Judge Rutherford. It gave me more credence." "Joseph, why were you put in jail during 1918 and 1919? "I continued writing the finished mysteries that Russell started, and I found that he was too easygoing and unsure of certain doctrines. He would use terms like 'I think' and 'the way I understand.' And I know from all my years in the legal system that people need rules and definitive answers. I kept telling Russell for several years to clean things up and shave off your beard, but Charles was too easygoing. I just hated the smell of his tobacco pipe. I felt all these things are a waste of money, and if we set that type of an example, then the members will be caught up in all that pagan stuff of the day, wasting their money. They could give it to us." John cuts in, "Please tell us, what put you in jail?" "I completed the finished mysteries book, and that was banned in Canada, and I was put in jail by the U.S. judges for sedition." "Joseph, can you tell us how long you were sentenced for and how that made you feel?" "I was sentenced for 600 years in jail, and my counterparts came into the prison, and I helped manuscript the legal method to make my way out. Nevertheless, I was out in 2 years, but lost one of my lungs in prison due to the dampness of the cell. The conditions were terrible because of the World War I and all the other prisoners of war. They were in the same prison for sedition." "Joseph, how did you feel when you got out of prison?" Joseph's eyes suddenly light up with a rage, and he says in a low tone, doing his best to hold it together, "I was a bit upset with them, to say the least." John asks, "How did you use the Bible to get even with the governments?" Joseph does not answer. He just stares out to the crowd like he is, in his mind, imagining those events all over again. John then announces, due to no response, we will have Michael upload from Joseph Franklin Rutherford's heart the answers to this court's questions. He was using methods to convince people that governments and religions were harlots and wild beasts, and he could maneuver the Bible to convince his followers he had the truth. To this day, the governing body actively promotes hatred of all religions, and especially the Catholic religion. Rutherford trained the organization how to pass down hate messages in a way that would look like these were God's messages, and then he printed many millions of copies of literature and used his foot soldiers to take his message to the world. Rutherford felt the whole world is evil, and the governing body has the only truth. Once Rutherford convinced the flock of his new ideologies, they soon changed appearances and implemented no beards to resemble Rutherford. Rutherford knew there was big money in making new books to back his new theories, and so his foot soldiers earthwide became his volunteer salespeople, and the Kingdom Halls became distribution outlets. Jehovah's Witnesses kept up with the door-to-door sales of their religion and have doubled in numbers because of it. To increase wealth and control, they soon created their own Bible and sold that throughout the world also. This new Bible changed certain scriptures to back the many theories of the religion. Soon the organization built one of the largest and most sophisticated printing factories in the world. To accomplish this, they needed to convince the flock that they had the only truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. His ego was so elevated he had his flock refer to him as Judge Rutherford, even though he only worked as a judge a few times on a substitute basis. His ego convinced his own self that he was the channel to God for the whole earth. By his elevated ego, hatred, and determination because of his imprisonment, he could use his legal mindset to articulate a religion that could litigate that all other religions were false. The religion has now snowballed to 20 million people, with all these same sentiments towards governments and other religions. They have adopted non-scriptural ideologies like rules on blood to make them stand out as more pious. John looks at Mr. Rutherford and asks, "Do you agree with everything said?" Joseph's stare is now broken, and his eyes light up. He replies with the biggest grin, "I am so happy to see that the religion has continued to follow what I started, and I had no idea the end would have delayed this long. That creates a bit of an issue." John, looking concerned, asks, "What issue?" Rutherford, looking down, still pondering, looks up and says, "Because the end did not happen yet, the earth cannot hold all the people on Resurrection Day, so my understanding must have other meanings." Please understand, Mr. Rutherford, your ideologies are a usurpation of the word truth. You have taken the proper use of this word from the Bible and applied it to your religion in a way that is untruthful. Mr. Rutherford, we will demonstrate to this assembly how you have assigned false dates to the end times, usurped God's name in a negative way, and you have confused millions of people on the truth about heaven and earth. Not to say Christmas, birthdays, the cross. These are all misleading, sly maneuvers using God's holy word, the Bible. Mr. Rutherford, you may be smiling now, but God's day of judgment is yet to come, and you, my friend, are in the grave and can only now see the snowball effect of misconceptions, false truths built out of anger toward governments. And now 20 million people carry ideologies based on your thoughts, not God's. Mr. Rutherford, any additional remarks? Mostly, but John, I'm just so impressed with all of my achievements. My litigation has seen remarkably in the religion today. John, I'm wondering, am I a great man in the religion today? Well, you could just imagine Rutherford's ego. If he was resurrected, he'd just be so proud of himself. So I had a lot of fun writing the book, and it's you get out all your stuff. I think you'd have fun reading it. So again, it's in the link below. Eventually, what I'm going to do is put it on as movies, but I have to get a larger license. I got to do more than 10 minutes. So in order to do that, if you can join the channel, it's a way of supporting us. And it's a way of me getting that license, and then I'll get you out some movies. Well, folks, until next time, keep living your day with love. Bye for now. Thanks again for watching. We appreciate your comments, your dislikes, and your likes. If you would like to support the channel, just press join and buy us a coffee once a month. Until next time, keep dancing, smiling, laughing, and most of all, keep loving those around you. And have a great day.
Produced by Fixing My Faith.